We don't have these unwritten bonds of civilization, or if we did have them in the past, they've substantially broken. To bring it to the question of the impossible ideal of liberalism, why is that? And I think I would want to saying, because in America we've seen the total hegemony of cultural liberalism do that any collective existence is not legitimate, and that the real legitimacy is only the whim of the individual. This is part of an extension of liberal ideology to the sphere of culture. So the question of communism in America is not just a question of the economy or policy, it's also a question of acquiring and building a nation. How do we learn how to live with each other and reproduce ourselves as a civilization? This is a fundamental communist question. As much as the question of who owns the land, who owns the land, who owns the resources, there's also a question of how do we exist collectively or in an organic way without it having to be enforced. And I think this is the premier American question of the 21st century. America must find a way to exist as a nation, or else the United States will be united along.
I'm not convinced that it can find a way. And to go back to what you were talking about when you mentioned federalism and certain rules in certain states, I think that is actually a recipe for disaster. It may be good in certain sense, but ultimately it will lead to chaos. Abortion is a big issue in the United States. It's one of the key wedges. And abortion, as of today, it is a federal question. Whether or not an unborn human being does have constitutional rights. You don't have to agree with me. My point is simply this. If we have two states, we have Oklahoma and Colorado, they border each other. In Oklahoma, abortion is completely illegal. In Colorado, it is completely unrestricted up to the point of birth. A lot of people I talk to, more libertarian and classically liberal, will say this is a good thing. That means if you want those rules, you can go to Colorado and get those rules. And I say, what happens when, under one system of governance in the United States and one constitution, a man and a woman get pregnant? Obviously, the woman is the one pregnant carrying the baby. And let's say 7 months decides, I can't be with this man, I don't want to have this baby. Now, the baby can survive outside the womb, but she decides to jump to Colorado, taking the child with her. The man then says, no, wait, don't kill it. There's no reason to kill it. I'll take the child. It's my child. And Colorado says, we don't care. We're going to kill it. You have these dramatically different worldviews, where in one state they're saying she's kidnapped a child, murdered, and Colorado's saying it's a medical procedure. I don't see how in the long term, I'm not trying to ignite abortion, but I'm just pointing out one extreme example where the views are so split that it could lead to absolute violence. We saw this with the first civil war, the first era in the United States, where U.S. states arguing who is or is not a person brings constitutional rights. And so the Civil War was not completely just about the civil rights of Black Americans. It was a much broader and complicated issue. However, it was obviously slavery to this issue. In Kansas, pre-Civil War, 7 years was a fight over whether or not Kansas would be a slave state or a free state. And the disparate ideologies in the United States were murdering each other in that state. Then the Civil War started, with all the other states, and this was mainly around whether or not Abraham Lincoln was going to abolish slavery or suspend extension of slavery. Then when Abraham Lincoln, of course, rallies troops and conscription, makes people go quell the rebellion, it causes many other. So you get my general point here.
I think what I would say is that one of the things Marxism I think is useful for is identifying that there may be a deeper cause, and this is not economic reductionism, but it's an analysis of social differences. So we know there's underlying this difference of opinion where different classes, the Slavocrat class of the South, from slavery was the primary mode of accumulation, versus the kind of northern industrial who believe that no, we don't have a stagnant system of accumulation. We should have industrial innovation and so on, which was a opposed to slavery, which was stagnating the productive forces. So underlying the clash of the ideology was a class difference, and I think it's the same today. I think today the difference you're seeing in America is a clash between hegemonic institutions, which act as social engineers, elevated above all of society on the basis of modern science and on the basis of expert knowledge, versus the communal, or whether we agree with them or not, the authentic values people possess, or at least think they possess. Because I'm not going to give conservatism such an easy, scot-free free pass. That's exactly it. Because I understand also how certain capitalists also influence these kind of rural areas and completely drive opinion and all the brainwashing that goes on. But nonetheless, they have a more authentic interaction with their beliefs. It's more close to their heart than, say, a kind of liberal who just believes this because an expert told them to believe it, and they don't relate to it authentically necessarily. So what else is that, look, America, amidst all of our multiculturalism, amidst all of these cultural differences, there is something that we can identify, at least in a preliminary fashion, that is common to us as American civilization, and it's pragmatism. We believe the ultimate truth as Americans is what works, what is sustainable, what can fend for itself, like Jack London's The Call of the Wild, a beautiful piece of American literature expressing our culture. And I think it's true also for culture. We can have these debates about what should be moral, what should be legal, what should we put on the books, all we want. But at the end of the day, what matters is what's going to work. What's going to be compatible with a genuine collective human existence. When I say that, I mean the ability for human beings literally to reproduce in existence, not only biologically, that's also very important. Like, people need to be able to feel like, they want to have kids and raise families and have family values, but also something that's not going to drive people to want to kill themselves and have a moral crisis where you get into drugs and fentanyl. And this is a element that is actually, if you want to put it in a vulgar way, necessary for human beings to work, just to exist. Like, we need to feel like we live in a society commensurate with morality, with beauty, with goodness, just to be able to function. So it's very American that we place an emphasis on just functionality, and it works. But I think this may be a key to, for me at least speaking, I'm the communist here, but for me this is key to American communism, understanding the pragmatism as a kind of basis.
So really what it comes down to in all these arguments is a cohesive culture where people agree with each other.
No, look. We have a system that works when it's used, and that's the American Constitution, the division of powers. And you're right that federalism creates problems, and you have cases in Texas that will take her transitioning away to California because you can't transition him and you can't transition him in Texas. But if you have a centralized unitary state, every faction can enforce their dictates on the whole country.
Everyone had the same moral.
We don't all the same moral compass. There is a unifying culture that's getting increasingly shattered right now because you have a polarization going on, and I'd say that is driven almost exclusively by the left. It's just talk before about the communists in America. Well, part of the Communist Party was a Democratic Socialist America. They have had a major impact in infiltrating the universities, infiltrating the Democratic Party, driving their policies, whether it's socialized healthcare, which transcend them, whether it's wokeism, cutting the military, making energy. You've got a Marxist right now who's Secretary of the Interior, and she is cutting every energy lease she possibly can in this country. You've got a Secretary of Energy, another Marxist, who's all U.S. military vehicles electric by 2030. You've got another Marxist, who's Secretary of, who is helping these Chinese-driven strike wave that we have seen. Let's put UPS out on strike. These are driven by the Chinese. Just a matter of by. So with this massive Marxist infiltration of our institutions, which is fracturing the country, destroying that cohesiveness for a reason. They want a revolution here.
Right, but that seems more like our nation's being attacked with disruptive, chaotic ideas instead of someone's trying to build something, right?
Well, look, and this is a key point that Haas is talking about. You got this, they talk about the unifying communism in China, or say, and I still think Russia is, as you say, Haas, still communist forms there. When the communists are in control, they want to unify the country. They want family values. They want to unify their patriotic, but they spread the destructive side of communism here. Just like China will execute it, they kill Americans with fentanyl every day because their goal is to destroy America and keep their country together. Russia will clamp down on gays and transgenders, but their communist friends spread it here because the goal is to destroy us to take over while preserving them. This is the whole crux of the argument. Communism is patriotic when it's not in control. It's completely unpatriotic because its goal is to destroy the existing social order so they can then establish their order.
So I completely disagree, just because of, I think, part of is practical experience on my part. You say of the SA and USA, also my understanding of history. You say that it's communists who have infiltrated the system. But all evidence and experience on my part shows me the opposite is true. It's the system that has infiltrated the communists. During the 1940s, for example, there was a 50,000 member USA, maximally, according to some historians, 300 of which were Soviet agents of some kind. Now, keep in mind, after the invasion of Hungary in 1956, there was a resolution with the Soviets ceased to ideologically motivated agents. They would just bribe people, basically, with money, right? But at this point, fast forward decades later, of an 8,500 strong CPUSA, 1,500 of them are FBI informants. So the CPUSA itself has been infiltrated. The institutions, the academic institutions, because remember, I don't mean to be too much of a Marxist, but I also think it's common sense. What makes more sense? Just an ideology being the octopus that